there is a misperception that if I do it the right way, it's actually going to cost me more or it's going to be more burdensome. Let me tell you what, it's just the opposite.
Move-in day is stressful enough. If even one student shows up and there's no mattress, the whole experience falls apart. Bad reviews, hotel costs, and a lot of scrambling. Inspections miss mattresses all the time, and local stores rarely carry the right size. That's why student housing pros rely on studenthousingmattress.com, powered by Jameson Bedding. Their US-made mattresses ship quickly anywhere in the lower 48 and include the durable blue vinyl models everyone in the industry knows. Stay ready for move-in. Visit studenthousingmattress.com to learn more.
Welcome to the Student Housing Insight Podcast, where we are connecting you to all things student housing. I'm your host, Wesley Dees. I'm also the CEO of Student Housing Insight. If this is your first time running across Student Housing Insight, we are a platform for off-campus student housing professionals to network and share ideas as well as data. You can find out more about our platform by going to studenthousinginsight.com. And don't worry, if you can't write that down, we'll have everything in our show notes that you can link to. In addition to this podcast, we also host the industry's monthly webinar for the U.S. called Shop Talk. Each month, we provide legislative and policy updates that are impacting our industry. Shop Talk also provides a monthly overview of pre-leasing data on a national and a regional basis, along with a panel of operators who provide their on-the-ground observations. And we typically provide a topic of the month as well. So a lot of great information. And if you are involved in the operations of student housing in the U.S. in any kind of way, regardless if it's as an operator or as a vendor, you should be registered to receive our monthly invites. You can register to receive those as well as review prior Shop Talk webinars by going to shoptalk.info. Again, that's shoptalk.info. We'll also provide that link in the show notes as well. Well, guys, today's episode is bringing you a conversation that every operator and portfolio leader definitely needs to hear. Our own Student Housing Insight ambassador, Cody Hardy of Landmark Properties, is sitting down with Tim Baldwin, who is the owner and lead attorney of Property Management Law Solutions based in Florida. Tim's a landlord-tenant specialist who has spent more than 2 decades helping property managers navigate everything from security deposits and reasonable accommodations to evictions, case law updates, and those kind of increasingly common tenant disputes that we're all seeing in this post-COVID AI-driven era. This interview really digs into the questions that I think most operators think they already understand to some degree until they really find themselves kind of suddenly in the gray areas, so to speak. Cody and Tim really walk through the foundational mistakes that I think property teams often don't realize that they're making. You know, how tenant attorneys and class action firms are changing the landscape, as well as, you know, why AI is creating new challenges for both residents as well as managers. And most importantly, why is it that having a trusted legal partner isn't just reactive? It's really one of the strongest proactive tools I think a landlord can have. And so whether you're on site or if you're supervising multiple assets or you're responsible for protecting a national portfolio, this conversation is really going to shift the way that you think about risk, efficiency as well, and just doing things the right way from day one. So with that being said, let's jump into Cody's interview with Tim Baldwin.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Cody Hardy. I'm a regional director for Landmark Properties. My guest today is Mr. Tim Baldwin. He is the owner and lead attorney of Property Management Law Solutions here in Pensacola, Florida. Tim and I met about a year ago on LinkedIn. He approached me to see if there was things that his firm and his team could do to assist us with all the fun stuff that we have to deal with property management, the law side, the legal side of things.
Yep.
And we were able to get a great deal worked out with him and his firm. They've been a great assistance to all of our Florida sites for Landmark, all the way from Miami, all the way up to Tallahassee. Great benefit with everything that his firm provides and the advice and the training, which we'll get into here in a second. But before we do that, I'm going to pass it over to Tim, allow him to introduce himself and kind of give us an idea of what you and your team do.
Sure. Thanks, Cody. Appreciate the opportunity. It's been great working with you as well, Cody. So I specialize in landlord tenant law. As Cody said, I've been an attorney now for almost 22 years. It's hard to believe. So I started out as a prosecutor, started my own practice in 2006, and then very quickly thereafter, I decided I wanted to specialize in this area. So since then, our firm has grown. We do statewide practice. So we represent mostly apartments, property management companies, landlords, real estate investors, with a heavy emphasis and focus on their rental business.
And I think that we were actually discussing this on the way over here and kind of let's just jump right into this. And the first question that I want to dive into is when it comes to somebody as a landlord, whether it's a smaller side of a landlord, maybe you own a couple of duplexes or an apartment complex, or you get up to large scale, something like Landmark Properties or some of the other players in the industry. What should somebody look for when they're looking to have legal representation, or they're looking to maybe partner with a firm that provides services like y'all's?
Yeah. Well, you need to find someone that you trust, first of all, has a good reputation, who's proven themselves in the community, but also someone who specializes in the area that you're dealing with. Because in today's world, and we see this probably more and more, but like there's doctors who specialize in certain areas and so on and so forth, but attorneys need to do that as well. The fact of the matter is there's just so much going on in the legal world for a variety of reasons, but you need someone who has stayed up with the law, with case law, with how courts look at your cases, the issues involved, so on and so forth. So you really need to find someone who specializes in that area. And again, trust is a big deal, but also someone who fits your personality,
sure,
right? Someone who you work well with, who you like. If you can like them, it makes them even better.
Absolutely.
So those are 3 or 4 important points.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that, when it's as far as on my side, on the property management side, when we have to deal with these issues, it's something that we're not like just hooray and happy about.
Right.
And I think it's because it's maybe a little bit of an unknown space, right? We kind of get the basics of things, how to handle security deposits, reasonable accommodations, things like that, but we're not the professionals. And I think having those conversations or reaching out to a professional like yourself or a firm to get some of those answers can feel a little unsettling. So I do agree with you. I think not only that trust, but even having that personality match, I think really helps. So that's some great advice. So I mentioned a couple of things in that I feel like are basic, right, on our side, which is handling security deposits or reasonable accommodations. But I do feel that maybe we don't have quite a firm grasp on it like what we should on the property management side. What are some of the things that you see, whether it be either mistakes or maybe just oversight when it comes to the simple things like just returning of security deposits or turning over possession or reasonable accommodations, some of the normal things that you might see?
Really good question. There are many what I would consider foundational knowledge requirements for property managers. In my experience, and again, doing this for over 20 years, I've come across a lot of managers that think they know what they're doing, and they may have some of it right, but there's some key parts that they have wrong. So you have to get those foundations established. There are ways of doing that. I think having an attorney, one of the things we like to do with our clients is provide them with these documents that you use on a regular basis. So your notice to pay, your security deposit claim form, a response format for reasonable accommodation requests, how you terminate, and what remedies you would have for example, when a tenant terminates early. So I think just having the instructions, the guidance to know the framework, and then whenever you have sort of the nuanced issues, the gray areas, that's a great time to go to your attorney or your supervisor and say, hey, this is the situation, what should I do?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. When we first started working with your firm, I was just going to Tim like, "Hey, this might be a silly question, but I feel like I've dealt with this for years." But just making sure, like you said, those gray areas are buttoned up, and I feel like more than ever, due to the resources that people are able to, and by they I mean the tenants that are able to get. There's a lot more questions that are being sent the landlord's way, right? To where when I started in this industry about 15 years ago, there wasn't a lot of challenge to the landlord as far as security deposits or things like that. But I think that access to information now is a lot more readily available. We'll get on the AI topic here in a little bit, but that kind of helps feed into that access that some of these tenants have. And so the pushback to landlords, I feel, at least in my experience, and maybe you can weigh on that, is actually becoming a lot more common than what it was a couple of years ago or a decade ago.
Without a doubt. When I first started in really specializing in this area, it was really sort of, I would say, unusual to see tenants contest or dispute what maybe be deemed routine issues, whether security deposit claims, maintenance requests.
Yep.
Now, it is very common. And AI has a lot to do with that, but I also think that the COVID era has also contributed to that, because during that time, the government was heavily involved in regulating landlords and what they could and could not do. So I think tenants sort of lights clicked on in their minds that, hey, we could use the government in some way, somehow to leverage our position. So those two things combined, as you said, the resources is what I think has been the catalyst, but it has been increasing over the past few years. I will also mention, Cody, that tenant attorneys are more available. So I think plaintiff attorneys see opportunities to sue larger companies, especially class action lawsuits. And so they're advertising for that. And I saw one of the purportedly one of the largest injury firms in America, an ad the other day asking tenants if they've had problems with their landlords, right? So they're looking for these opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just shows right there even more of a reason to consult firms like yours and get into a program. That's what I call our relationship, not only just a professional, but it's a program. It's not only designed to be there in a reactive case, but also proactive as well. And so I definitely want to get into that now that we're kind of uncovering the fact that if you're in this industry, whether you're new or whether you've been in the industry for a while, you're going to see these things. Yeah. And especially once you get up to a level of maybe you're a portfolio manager or a regional manager, you start seeing it even more broad as you start overseeing multiple sites. And so I want to get into what you and your firm do for landlords, not just simply representing them in those reactive cases, but what are y'all doing in the proactive spectrum to make sure that we might not get to have the reactive or have to go to trial or things like that?
Several things. First of all, it's the advice. So being on call, if you will, if you want to call it on call, for advice is tremendously important. Nothing replaces an attorney who knows the subject matter, who knows the issues, who knows your business, to look at your situation and say, this is really your best route. Here's how you would avoid the risk. So that's the first thing, and it's foundational. The second thing is training material. So we have a couple of websites that are designed to help landlords, property managers learn much more about the business and the pitfalls and the best practices of that business. So that's the second thing. And those are really the pillars of that.
Sure.
But the forms and these types of things are also important because they need to be prepared in a way that's legally compliant, but also considers other things that may not necessarily be prescribed by the law, but are helpful for the landlords to avoid liability and to communicate clearly to tenants. And so those are really the foundational parts of it, because obviously whenever you have a question or you are involved with some sort of dispute with the tenant, that is certainly a good time to call an attorney. Yeah,
and we actually were also talking about this on the drive over here, but all of y'all who are listening that are on the property management side, I'm sure you'll chuckle at this, but we are kind of almost in a world where, that Grace Hill fair housing training or that Grace Hill how to deal with a problem tenant or things, while it is helpful, that is exactly what you said. That's the foundations of it, right? And knowing that is important, but that's not just where it stops. And I think that it is important, especially on our side, that we are getting those forms and those trainings and those documents, because while our job is to make sure that we are providing quality housing and an experience for residents, y'all's job is to make sure that you're staying up to date with everything that is going on and changing. And so with that said, how much in the almost 20 years, I think is what you said, that you've been in practice, how much have you seen when you started change until what it is now? And how much is this changing? And what are you and your team doing to make sure you're staying on top of that in order to give the best advice for your clients?
Yeah. I would say it became sort of the changes, if you will. And by that, I mean just how tenants approach landlords has changed dramatically since 2020. Okay. Again, COVID was, I think, a big deal, but AI, of course, now is those two things, I think, together, and tenant attorney availability. Okay. So those things have really changed it. And I've always done this, but I'm doing it way more now than I've ever had before. But the proactive part on our side is really staying on top of the trends, the updates, having our finger on the pulse of the business itself, on the industry of the rental business. So case law updates, which there are more and more happening. And this is nationwide, I'm talking about, not just Florida. You also have the trends that you see with legislation. What are the legislators looking at? And then you have associations. What are the the NAA and FAA and these types of things? What are they looking at? As a whole, what is the industry experiencing? And then, of course, we use our own clients' experiences, because we can get into the very granular with our clients to say, what are you really experiencing? What are you seeing? And of course, we see much of that because you come to us with those types of issues. So it's really a culmination of all those things together to have a holistic picture of not just what's happening, what's about to happen.
Sure.
Well, how can we prepare for what's down the road?
Yeah, and I think that speaks to that proactive side of things that we were mentioning is we try to remain as proactive as possible so we don't have to be reactive in those situations. But unfortunately, as much as you prepared, we're still going to be involved in those. And so you mentioned the AI side of it. The AI side, I think that we're kind of familiar. We've all used AI, ChatGPT or whatever it is. We're familiar with how it works. And I don't think that it is uncommon for us to see tenants fighting back with what we think like, oh, they just plugged this into ChatGPT, right? And they got the answer. So I want to flip around to the other side. I think that there could be a common mistake on the property management side where some of the younger generation who are becoming community managers or getting to these roles who have had this technology available to them for quite a while are actually maybe using it to fight back against some tenants. And I want to kind of get your opinion on that. I personally don't think it's probably a good idea, but I kind of wanted to get your opinion on what you think about.
Well, AI is a powerful tool. It can help you. You have to do it with caution, though. So an example of what I'm referring to here is so we use AI in a couple different contexts. So first is we have a subscription with Lexis. Been around a long time. It's legal research, okay? All cases, statutes, all this sort of thing. So it has an AI program, but it's closed. It's contained within that system. So everything it draws from are real cases, real statutes, real secondary sources written by lawyers and judges, right? So that's very safe.
Sure.
You still look at it. You still look at the cases or whatever. But you don't have to say, is this a real case or not a real case? Like, this is real. ChatGPT doesn't have that same reliability, okay? So you can never rely on it as an authority of citing correct information. What ChatGPT can do, though, is help you flesh out ideas, I believe. So it can help organize your thoughts. It can help word things, but garbage in, garbage out. So if you put in a bad idea or it's an incorrect rule of law, it could be anything. If it's bad going in, it's going to be bad going out. That can get you in trouble because it sounds so good whenever ChatGPT creates it. It's like, oh, this is true. Yeah, that sounds correct, but it may not be. So that's where community managers really need to be careful in using AI.
I love that term, garbage in and garbage out. And I think that where that recollects with me is when we started working with y'all and we would send some of these examples over, the questions that y'all were asking was actually probing to get more information out of us. And I started seeing that We have a little bit of a bias in a way of the situation that's
Yeah.
going on, right? I would love to say that every resident is the most pleasant individual, but we deal with some of those. And sometimes I find on the regional side, overseeing community managers, there's a little bit of feelings involved with
Yes.
that situation, right? And sometimes on the surface level, you're not getting the full amount of detail that goes on or goes into that situation. And so that's a great example. If they put that information in and they're not quite giving all of the information due to the situation, well, they're not going to get a truthful answer. So
Absolutely.
with that said, let's get a little bit more to kind of the scary outcomes, right? Being in the industry for the amount of time that I've been and being at several properties, I've been on the other side and I've seen the background of what some of these big cases actually can do and the harm that they can cause to a site or to a company or a landlord. And so what is the importance, and would you say, or the major important factor of having a lawyer that you trust, having one that has the resources? Like, what can go bad, I guess, is my question.
Well, a lot of things. I mean, you can look at it from a case-by-case basis of the individual tenant. Maybe that unit now becomes not profitable for that year because of the amount of expenses, not handling situations correct. It only escalates from there. So the legal troubles can get quite expensive. We may, or you probably have seen, I'm sure you have, the news that's come out with the class action lawsuits and the settlements that have been paid out by some of the largest, property management companies in America. Those are nothing to scoff at because some serious liability and risk mitigation issues there. But when you look at what led to those situations, I really think, and this is not to try to toot my own horn here, but several of those lawsuits, when I looked at the content of it, what they were alleging, I've been preaching those messages to landlords for years. It's like, you're going to get in trouble with this if you do it this way. And that's exactly what they were sued for, with tremendously costly results. So listen to your attorney when they're telling you, here's risk. The risk mitigation business with what you guys do is so vitally important because the more money you save in that business, obviously the more money your investors make. So listen to your attorneys who know this business well and who know how the law applies to that business, and really don't just think about, you're not in a bubble here, right? I mean, everything you do can be scrutinized, it can be made public, media looks at it, and then large law firms look at it, and not even to mention the AG's offices, state and federal look at it. Next thing you know, you're in a heap of trouble.
Yeah, I think that's where the scary side of it comes to, right? Is you don't want to be that individual, whether it's a community manager or a regional or even higher, where something like that happens at your site. And if it does happen, you want to at least be able to make sure that all of your ducks are in a row. And I think that's where partnering with you and your law firm has really helped from the beginning, making sure not only are we doing the steps to hopefully not to get there, but if we do get into a situation, all of our documentation is there, we're handling that situation appropriately moving forward, and hopefully doesn't get us to that newsworthy story. So
you're much safer to bring in that legal advice early on than to wait too late.
Yeah, I agree. So the other half of the business, I think the one that we're the most familiar about on the property side is the eviction side, right? That is the one that I feel like if you've been in the industry for a while, you know what that's like. You know how the 3 days go out and how you file those evictions. For us old school folks, that was actually going to the post office and then going to the courthouse and going back and forth multiple times. But your company actually kind of solves a lot of that problem on the eviction side. So I want to get into that. Tell me what you and your firm do on the eviction side and how it benefits landlords by going with a firm like yours.
Well, first of all, it's a legal action, so you really should have an attorney. But also in Florida, if you're a company landlord, you have to have an attorney. Now, I know some people ignore that. I have seen it, but that is the law. For those two reasons, you really should have an attorney. But there's another reason, and that is an attorney who specializes in this area is going to be quicker, more efficient, less costly, know how to respond to tenants who defend or answer in some way, and expedite these cases. And so every day that you can save on the turnover process is a benefit to you. So if you're paying $500 for an eviction fee or something like that, and you've saved 2 weeks, 3 weeks of turnover time, obviously the math works out in your favor. So you got to find an attorney, I think, who knows how to do it, prioritize it, and has a team that's looking out for your best interests in those cases.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, like I said, again, for an old school individual who started in the industry and had to do the whole paper trail going back and forth, this might just be a benefit that I'm looking at and going, this is amazing. But the online platform that you guys have when it comes to filing this eviction, when the first time that I used that and plugged that information in, and then from there it was like, I could kind of sit back and focus on my side. So tell me how that helps benefit the landlords as well, being able to just have a spot that they can go and put that information in and what your team does with that.
Yeah, so it's all online. I mean, everything done is online nowadays, which is great.
Yeah.
Obviously, the court system itself is online filing. It's really opened up the opportunity to be able to do statewide practice like we're doing with you guys. So, but yeah, it's simple enough as going onto our website, clicking on request eviction, completing that little intake form, submit, boom, we got the case. Obviously, you have to get us the lease and the documents that we need. But from there, we take it. We take it from there, and thankfully for us, again, it's all online, so helps us to expedite. We don't have to be driving down to the courthouse and all that. Hearings, many times, most of the time, are done online. So there's just this expedited and much more convenient factor. Now, I will say this is interesting because one of our judges here in Pensacola is retiring, and she gave a speech yesterday at the bar luncheon, and she said, I know we do a lot of stuff online nowadays, but as much as you can meet in person with people, try to do that because relationships are important. And that's true. Getting to know people, like we talked about before, having that relationship is still very important. So get to know your attorneys, even though you may not be in their office. Talk to them on the phone. Get to know them. Learn that trust is so important.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that it resonates, especially coming from our industry, is we're starting to see a little bit of that, whether it be AI or more of the technology. There's some programs out there where it's even like self-touring or text response that are AI, but there's still that personal factor that needs to be there. So I definitely agree with that. But in situations like this, you hit the nail on the head. The longer that individual is inside of the unit that is not paying rent, you can't put that unit online and there's no money coming in. So the faster that we can get these individuals out and legally, a lot of, we can't change the locks. I know some people probably still have that concept. Oh, they left, change the lock real quick. But the faster we can get them out, the faster we're able to get that unit back online and start making some money. Awesome. Well, the other thing that I wanted to get into when it comes to having the attorney and the landlord relationship, what is it like when you yourself are representing not just one property, but multiple properties? And how do you manage that? I know you have a team that works with you and kind of want to get into that. Like, what does your team look like and what resources does your team bring to all of these properties?
We manage all of our cases, all of our clients through a system, a management system. So all of our clients' information about the cases, all the properties is in that system. Everybody in our office has a specialty area. So we have an eviction attorney who's focused on the efficiency of the eviction process, and she looks at all the intakes, she looks at all the filings going into that process. We have a paralegal who also is a part of that process with very experienced, very, very good at what she does. We have an office manager who's looking at the overall picture. We have another attorney who's the litigator when there's contested issues, whenever there's court hearings. I'm also a part of that as well. We have remote people who help with intake, who are also helping to screen some of the more simple tasks, these types of things. So 6 of us in office and others that we need that are more sort of as needed basis, if you will.
Yeah, and I mean, my experience with working with y'all, from the time that we submit questions, I mean, we're getting rapid fire responses, or we're getting questions sent back to us, and finding time to be able to get the information that's needed. And I think that that's important, and you've mentioned it several times now, is that efficiency, right? And not only being efficient, but also being effective at the same time. So I think that that's super important. We've had nothing but great experiences, and it's really helped take a load off of the property management side, our backs, because we're faced with still leasing the property and marketing and dealing with all the other resident stuff in order to be able to have that relationship and hand it over and work with a firm that helps do those things, I think is important. And so the next question I would have is, why doesn't everybody do that, right? Why doesn't every landlord have or work with a firm like y'all's? What do you think is the thing that is stopping individuals from seeking that advice or pairing up with a firm like yours?
It's a great question. I've wondered that myself. Like, what is that stop? What is that stop? I think for some people, they don't actually see the need. They really, truly don't. Maybe it's like someone who says, I never need to go to the doctor. I never need to do a check. I mean, it's not a great comparison, but if you don't see the need, you don't have a motivation to do it. There's some people that may see the need and would love to have a great relationship with an attorney, but they think maybe it's too expensive. I don't want to pay the money. So they don't see the cost-benefit analysis as weighing in favor of having an attorney help them. I think those are probably the two biggest reasons.
Sure.
I guess you might could say to some extent ignorance. Like they don't realize just how complicated and complex it can be.
Sure.
And you don't know what you don't know. So not seeing the big picture, not seeing it even on a granular level, I think is another part of that reason. So I think those are three good reasons, or not, they're not good reasons, but they are reasons people don't do it.
No, and I mean, I would agree with that. I think that there's that stigma out there, right? And you mentioned it, going to the doctor, going to maybe like the dentist, or going to a lawyer, you're not going to, the idea is you're not going to go in there and just spend a couple of dollars, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of going like that with going to the grocery store nowadays.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
I think that's a great one. And then again, like you mentioned, the ignorance of it, especially for some of the old school folks, we get stuck in our ways, right? And we think that everything kind of stays, I've returned thousands of security deposits. I've dealt with a bunch of organic growth issues, because we don't use the M word in this industry, but I've dealt with a lot of those, or reasonable accommodations. However, I would say that we're starting to see, and again, post-COVID, we're starting to see new things come up. I remember when I started, emotional support animals weren't really a big thing.
Yeah.
And then that boom came, right?
Yeah.
And then reasonable accommodations, while they've always been a thing, but they weren't really, in my opinion, dealt with kind of the intricacy as they're dealt with now. And so I have to agree with all of those. Now, with that said, how are you combating that? I think that you simply reached out to me on LinkedIn. I've always kind of felt this way of like, I feel like we do need a local counsel or that relationship to be able to say like, hey, Tim, are we handling this correctly? Or how do you think we should move forward? And so how are you trying to reach out further to individuals, or how can individuals get in touch with you?
Yeah.
How's that marketing go?
Well, I try to, for a long time, I really didn't put a whole lot of effort into sort of, introducing myself to people. Over the past few years, though, I've changed that approach, and which is why we've grown so much in the past few years to a statewide level. I'm trying to spread the good news, if you will, through marketing, and we have a marketing team. I'm a part of several associations, so I speak regularly at various associations throughout the year. I have my own podcast. I do seminars once a month for free to people. So I'm really routinely trying to get out there and share the importance of doing it the right way. And that's really what this is all about. You're investing a lot of money in an asset, which that asset not only serves the investor's purposes, but how many people does it employ? A lot of people.
Yeah.
How many tenants does it house? A lot of people. This whole business is such a vital part of a healthy society. So why are we so flippant about doing it the right way?
Yeah.
You need to do it the right way. And so that's what I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to help as much as I can.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the thought of why not do it the right way is that, again, that stigma, this is going to take a while. I'm going to have to do all this. But you don't, right? You partner up with a great partner like you and your firm, and they really take a lot of that legwork out of the tenant side, or the landlord
Can I
side.
say something to that?
Sure.
It's a great point.
Yeah.
There is a misperception that if I do it the right way, it's actually going to cost me more or it's going to be more burdensome. Let me tell you what, it's just the opposite. When you do it the right way, there is such an efficiency to that business. It's not always that way, but there is, as a rule, much more efficient.
Yeah.
And then therefore much more profitable.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I would like, as far as from my experience and having and overseeing CMs and even help mentoring newer regionals, I don't know if it's quite, maybe I don't want to do the work. I think it's, they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
And I know we hit on this a little bit before about the training program, but I think that's something that's super important, again, in our industry, because we do have training programs out there in platforms, whether you're using something like Workday or using Grace Hill. We have those training platforms. But this is a catch-all type of training platform versus what you guys provide is a more niche, like we're going to give you the catch-all, but we're also going to be there for those individual things. And I think that again, is really important because like you said, doing it the right way from the beginning, even though it might seem like it's more work, is going to save you in the long run.
Yes, indeed.
I guess the last question really that I have for you, I think we could wrap it up, is what would you say the most important thing is for a landlord or for a company like the one that I work for, the most important thing to reach out to an attorney or a law firm like yourself in order to establish that relationship? Like, why is that so important for us?
I think probably the most important thing is just having that attorney who you trust and who is truly a specialist in this area, who you can call at any time.
Yeah.
I mean, really. I can lay down a stack of papers and show you all the reasons and procedures and all this. Like here's your book, right? But there's a real life component to this. There's a human element to this that is more dynamic than that. And so having that person to say, yes, I understand here's the rule, but here's maybe what I'm thinking is different in this situation. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
It's so vital. It's so vital.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that because I remember when we first started interacting, once we got everything squared away, we started working together. I remember when we first started interacting, I think I sent an email that was like, hey, sorry to ask so many questions. You're like, don't apologize. That's what we're here for.
Right.
And maybe that's something that we on the property management side need to look at. It's like, it's okay to have those relationships and establish those relationships and ask those questions, right? Because all you're wanting to see, and I'm sure, is us protected and make sure that these things don't turn into bigger snowball effect of what they can be. So maybe that's a stigma we have to kind of work on our side, on the property management side, is break through that uncomfortable barrier that you have there possibly with this.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Everything you just said, that's true. There is no dumb question. The more questions, really, the better. Sure. And then you begin to learn through those questions. And the questions become more focused and fine-tuned, and you start to see, okay, this is how he's approaching these things. I see that now. And also, the more information we have as your attorneys, the better. I'm just telling you, there is no fact that you should keep from your attorney. Share it all, and they can help navigate that situation for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's going from day one of working with y'all until where we are now, seeing the growth within at least my community managers and the teammates, and seeing how they're approaching things after working with you and your team, and they kind of catch on to like, this is how we handled this situation before. I think that's the end goal, right? Is making sure that not only just with the training material that y'all provide, but also that personal experience like you're mentioning. There is truly that personal experience between that email exchange. And I'm really seeing the growth within my team and even with me and my understanding of how things work. Because again, I'm like, this is the way I felt like we've always done it. It's like, no, that's not how we handle that. And so, yeah, I appreciate everything that you and your team have done and continue to work together with our Florida assets. Obviously, Student Housing Insight, we reach a lot of individuals all over the nation, but those particularly in Florida who are listening to this podcast, Tim's information will be available. So that way you could reach out to him and his team if you are looking not only just for that legal advice, but also that personal partnership, and him and his team can get you all of that information and all of that training material. So thank you so much.
Thanks,
I
Cody.
appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah,
Absolutely.
of course.
Well, thanks again to Cody for doing this interview with Tim, and what a masterclass really on just the realities of landlord tenant law in 2025, almost 2026. The two key takeaways that I had, one, the game has really changed dramatically with post-COVID regulations. The rise of tenant attorneys and residents using certainly AI to challenge decisions have really created a more scrutinized environment, I guess is the best way of describing it. And what worked 10 years ago clearly doesn't work today. And so I think that was something that really stood out. I think the other thing that he said there at the end was how much relationship matters. And Tim's biggest point was, having an attorney that you trust, one who knows your properties, which is an incredibly, local thing, and not just your properties, but I think your team as well, and kind of the intricacies of landlord tenant law to your kind of micro region, I think is one of the most valuable and probably underused assets that a company can have. So those were the two things that really stood out for me. But hey, if you're operating in Florida and want to strengthen your legal processes, we're going to provide Tim's information in the show notes. So make sure that you reach out to him. But I think that gets us to the end of the episode here. As always, thank you for listening to the Student Housing Insight podcast. If this episode was helpful, please share it with your teams and anyone else who handles resident issues within student housing in your organization or in your sphere of influence. Love meeting new listeners to the podcast. And again, don't forget to register for Shop Talk. Our next one is coming up on January 15th. We've got too many things going on with LeaseCon, TurnCon that's happening in December. We're providing a bunch of updates there that really kind of flow into what we normally cover with Shop Talk. So we're skipping December, and the next one will be on Thursday, January 15th in 2026. So we will see you then. And until the next Shop Talk, we'll see you on the next episode. We've got some great stuff that's coming out, recapping OpTech that happened in Vegas a little bit earlier in November. And looking forward to you getting more about that. Plus, we'll have the wrap-up episode for November with myself and Greta Dare. That will be coming up. You'll probably see it drop probably the same week that we're all at LeaseCon, so around the 8th to the 10th of December. Well, guys, take care, and we'll see you on the next episode.